is what you I don't know if this is a word that you coined. If it is, you should probably like write an article and
I
like
did. I
claim
did
credit
coin
for
it,
it.
as far as I
Retail
know.
militarism, and this is like these companies that use like the military to like be like we're the military guys that sell coffee or whatever the hell else. So tell us
Yeah.
about this.
Yeah, so I mean, I could, I'm sure that hopefully there's listeners who can chime in and add a dozen things, but this retail militarism, it's everywhere, and I could almost put it into two categories, but they're both of the same piece of trying to cash in on the military's position in our society and all the advertising the military is already propaganda the military's put out there, and just ride that straight into brand identification. So you have like Black Rifle Coffee, like in what aside from you could say that there's a connection between like coffee becoming the drink of choice of America to World War II, where it was issued by Folgers, you know what I mean, or back to the Civil War. But there's really no logical reason why your Ethiopian blend has to be branded by Black Rifle Coffee, except that they managed to just try to tap into this this market for, well, it makes me badass by association if I buy Black Rifle Coffee and drink that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and this is across the board. I mean, there's all kinds of niche brands of coffee now. Everyone's got their artisanal roastery, but like, it's just crazy that I swear there must be an economic boom in that I don't understand. There's got to be a subsidy somewhere because there's like everywhere I turn around in my hipsters. But anyways, um, but yeah, so from retail militarism with like Black Rifle Coffee to along most of the East Coast and kind of branching outward, there's friggin' Mission Barbecue, which is just imperialism, the restaurant. I did steal that line, but it's just wall to. If you haven't set foot in one of these, I don't encourage you to go, but it might be worth poking inside and just seeing. Somehow, when they open these places up, they have a curator or somebody that goes around and collects unit badges and coins and helmets from squadrons that are in the area. And the minute the place opens, it's just decked wall to wall. Instead of sports memorabilia, it's military memorabilia specific to that area where they've opened the business. And it's not just that, like, and then people add to it by taking their policeman's patch or whatever and adding it to the bulletin board or whatever. But the place is just, it's hard to imagine, but they have pictures of military equipment and pilots' helmets and a Navy football uniform in Annapolis and an Army football uniform up in New York. And, it's just, and in what world does barbecue have anything to do with that, being decked wall to wall in unit badges and and having country music blaring. You know what I mean? The country music at least makes sense a little bit with barbecue. You know what I mean? But like, there's no reason this place has to. Oh, and if you get your food delivered, it comes on an old deuce and a half. You know, painted all black with big stars on it. A U.S. Army star, but every Mission Barbecue has a giant deuce and a half truck parked out front as a billboard / delivery truck. Why?
You know, I think there's a little bit to it, and I almost said this with the NFL, but I think it's like probably better than I'm talking about it here, and that is just like after 9/11, this kind of the whole they hate us for our freedom thing, and so now like NFL and like cheerleaders and like all the things that we thought that the terrorists didn't like, then like there's like an additional reason to like pair that with the military and grift off of it. I think that has something to do with it, and I'm sure like barbecue is another one of those things. Like Muslims don't eat pork, and so like yeah, I remember like just when I used to watch like football games, there was like the first commercial would be like the Army drone commercial, the middle one would be like the Coors Light and Twins commercial where they're like eating bacon, drinking beer, and then the next one would be the Marine Corps commercial where at the end they go the few, the proud, the Marines. I'm sure everybody remembers that if they're a little bit old enough to. And just like I think all that was supposed to be associated together in our head with like this is like the part of America that we're protecting: country music, beer drinking, mini skirts, boobies, football, barbecue, right?
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. And yeah, and it kind of it. I don't even know. Like Under Armour is definitely worse about this too. But the last one I have kind of, and it kind of ties back to the NFL too, is they I don't think of them. I don't think of Nike, especially Nike, as a kind of more internet like global brand at this point. I don't think that they necessarily feel like they have to. That is probably tailored to the U.S. market or maybe some other markets. Under Armour is more of a national only brand. They haven't really broken out much. They're local to Maryland, so I know people who work for Under Armour, and my best friend works for Nike, and I hear his thoughts on things too. But yeah, they developed this like. Is it to some extent they're just kind of following the market into the camouflage and all that stuff, but it's got to be, it can't just be Nike Pro when they're competing line with Under Armour, like the moisture wicking material that Nike came out. It couldn't just be Nike Pro. It had to be Nike Pro Combat. You know what I mean? Just what and why is it nobody's gearing up for combat in a Nike moisture wicking shirt except for Nike Pro Combat sold better and marketed better. They had to tack that on there. And Under Armour too, and then add in like all the camo flare and all that stuff, and then you could turn away from that. You can not buy that. You know what I mean? And that's just, I know it doesn't seem like much, but it's one of the few little pieces of leverage for those of us that are more on the libertarian free market side, just being conscientious of how we vote with our fiat. Or, of like, do we really need to throw our money to the people that are just kind of feeding back on this cycle of just insane militarism that we swim in here?
Yeah, I think I got one of those Nike cooling shirts on right now. So much of it is hard to do because everybody contracts with the military.
Well, and you don't have a choice sometimes, too.
Right.
Which really, if you want a shirt for the military, you have to find, where's the packaging? I just came across this. There were some T-shirts that were that I had left over and like fresh in the package from my military days. And if you really wanted the military issue, you would say U.S. prison industries, and it would be built by enslaved people, enslaved people in a minimum security prison somewhere. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you like, it was just everything the military buys is either made by prisoners or by the blind. Like all the pens they made by the blind, because there's some company where they get a deal for a charity deal or a deal for making Skillcraft making pens for the military, and they say produced by blind people as sort of which Lighthouse for the Blind is the company that makes money producing pens for the military. But I digress a little bit into like, yeah, I'm sure some people are buying it because it's like, that's what the Army wears. And I'm sure little kids, too, are like, is this what the Army wears when it has camo on it or whatever? And, like, it's just our one little way, some of our ways we have leverage is choosing games, movies, sports, not letting the ad buys show. Not all those little things. We can change the channel. We can choose to watch something different. We can spend our money on a different piece of clothing. That it seems small, but at least it's something we can do that maybe will dilute this, militarist culture a little bit and kind of take the dollar out of it.
Yeah. That's a great point. I mean, just all the silly things that like people have spent money on, I think because of partly the military, like after 9/11, Hummers were all over the place, and part of that was like the military use Hummer. Not that anybody was rolling around in Afghanistan in a big yellow H2, but the guy who bought one kind of thought like, oh, I have like the same thing the Army does.
God knows when I was a kid and I saw, when the Hummer first was sold publicly, and Arnold Schwarzenegger bought one, and I don't know why I remember that, but then I was at some car show and I saw a Hummer and I was like, wow, that's what I want. It's a terrible vehicle. It's awful. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Just like I said, the prison industry shirts are not what you really like. There's so many other veterans that'll talk about, that will rant about this, but you don't want mil-spec. Mil-spec is garbage. Whether it's your uniform, whether it's the clothes you wear or the Humvee or a mil-spec AR-15, you don't want that. It's not that good. But somehow, usually the free market version of it is better, but you don't even need that, You just buy the stuff that's best for you.
Yeah.